Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Ken Tapp. I am the co-CEO of Decentral Life, and I'm going to go through our September 30th, 2025 third quarter report with you today. Now, before I get started, this was supposed to be a live recording. However, at the last minute, we had a scheduling conflict. We were invited out to the 47G conference in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is where I'm at right now. We have the pleasure to be speaking at the event. And so, given the conflict in scheduling, I did not want to postpone this update. And so, I've recorded it in advance. So, before I get too far along, I do want to make sure that we've got our safe harbor and disclaimer up here. Of course, I'm going to talk about everything that has happened in the last quarter, and I'll do some comparison to previous quarters, but I may actually talk about some future forecasting in the company and discuss some of the new things that we're doing as we have entered into quarter four and as we head into Q1 of 2026. Of course, our safe harbor and disclaimer is on the screen. I'll leave that up for just a moment. And as we head into 2026, I will point out that at the beginning of 2025, we presented a business plan where we expanded beyond just being a technology business incubator. Of course, for years, we have been focused on blockchain technology and tokenomics. And this year, we introduced our tokenomics business model and revenue stream. And alongside that is the ability to not just tokenize existing stock securities in companies, but real world assets, which of course includes real estate and the sort. And so let me do this a little different than I typically do on a quarterly update. I'm going to start from reverse and work my way to the beginning of our quarterly report. Now, some of you may have already gone through the report, and so this might be a challenge for you if you're used to me going from page 1 through page 24. I'm going to actually start here on page 22. And the reason for that is because I wanted to cover a couple of things. One would be our subsequent events that took place here in the quarter. And we wanted to point out that we, of course, changed some of the leadership in the company. We've added our co-CEO, Ryan Messer, and another board director, Brad Hoffman. These are two gentlemen that I have been working closely with over the past year or so, along the lines of our existing business model, but also learning much about the business and the industry that they have been focused on as well, which includes AI data centers and the different solutions for powering those data centers. And as we began to learn each other's industries, we identified some real great solutions that we can bring to market. Now, I'm also going to point out, because it's been asked by many shareholders as it relates to the investment portfolio that the company has and will continue to build upon with our model moving forward. And it's important as I get to the financials to note that here on page 22, go and read that thoroughly. I won't read it entirely right now to you, that you might get bored with that. But again, as I just pointed out, that portfolio will continue to grow and increase as we add not just stock, but token securities and assets to the balance sheet moving forward. Okay, as I head on to the next slide here, and I've highlighted the important parts that I want to point out. Some people who are new to the company don't understand all of the different ways that we generate revenue now. In the past, those that are very familiar with the company know that that was primarily in the technology business incubator business model. That has, of course, expanded outside of software as a service and now includes AI data as a service, blockchain as a service, energy as a service. And though we don't have enough time today to go through all of the details of each one of those new additions to our model this year, I do plan in Q4 to have some additional podcast and shareholder updates. I will point out that a significant part of this model that we have been executing on this year in the last few quarters is preparing the company to tokenize other companies, to tokenize real world assets. Again, that includes real estate. And I think that you're going to understand more about that as we get into these additional shareholder updates before the end of Q4, where we can do a deep dive into our business presentation deck that we updated and made live about a month and a half ago or so, and really get into the weeds, because I'll have with me some of our other team members to talk about those different sectors in great detail because of their expertise in those sectors. Okay, so getting right here into the financials, let me just move up to the balance sheet here. And I'm going to point out some of the important parts of our financials. Please go through those in detail if you haven't already. But our year over year total assets in the company have increased from 620,000 to 1.6 million. And the total liabilities have remained generally unchanged, decreasing from about 119,000 in Q3 of last year to now 113,000 as of this year. And so the takeaway there is that our net tangible assets have grown year over year from 501,000 in Q3 of 2024 to now 1.5 million in Q3 of 2025. That's a 300% increase year over year in shareholder equity. Now, on the income statement, the past 5 quarters have remained consistent and also expected based on the previous licensing agreements that have been in place. And we are now forecasting Q4 revenues to be up about 20% year over year from Q4 of 2024. Now, to compare that growth in 2024 revenues, which were also up 10% from 2023, we have got a nice growth pattern that is forming. However, we can't predict in 2026 what that revenue growth will be based on, because in 2023 and 2024 and 2025, revenue growth was almost entirely based on those previous TBI licensing agreements and the growth of those companies and their revenues. As we get into Q1 of 2026, we are going to start to see some of the M&A activity that we have been working on all year. In fact, some of that started over a year ago, as well as the tokenization of companies. Many of you who have followed the company for the past few years know that this has been a real focus of ours, is to be able to structure properly the tokenization of securities and real world assets for companies. And we have been waiting for the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, to come out with the guidance, rules, and regulations to provide to these companies in how they should be doing their filings. We'll talk about that in more detail on one of the other shareholder podcast updates, so that companies can take their own token securities and go public with those. Of course, there's a lot of end results that's very positive to those companies, but as it relates to us, we are able to build on our portfolio in the company. So that's the long and the short of it is. And we're going to start to experience that as we get into Q1 of 2026, along with the additional revenue streams that we put in place and began working on this year. So I'm going to move right along. As I pointed out at the very beginning of the update here, we do have 2 new board members. Not only is Ryan Messer a co-CEO with myself, but he's also a director of the company, and so is Brad Hoffman. You'll notice on this chart, which the OTC has us fill out, to point out how many securities we are holding on to and what type of voting power comes with those securities. It's an important table. We want you to take a close look at that, especially as we continue to grow with our business model. But you'll note here the number of voting share securities. You'll also notice what equity securities the board currently has, and that, of course, is at 0. Okay. I have highlighted this section so that people know that they can go to this page on our report and really dive a little deeper into the entire business model. I'm not going to read the entire thing to you right now, but I have highlighted it so that you can go to that page. And then I really want to point this out. We do not have any company convertible debt on our books. We have not since about first quarter, we're going into second quarter of 2021. So it's also important to point out that we have not increased the number of outstanding shares in the company. All right, I'm going to just skip right up here to the last thing I want to point out, which is the OTC markets in this form does request that we point out if there's going to be any type of future stock split or dividend, recapitalization, merger, acquisitions, spinoff, or reorganization, either anticipated or have had occurred in the past 12 months. And though we haven't had any occur in the past 12 months, we are focused on having that happen soon. We'll have information that comes out, and we'll continue to provide that information in advance. But as I mentioned earlier, and I have in past updates, we are focused this year in preparing the company for mergers, acquisitions, and in doing so, an uplisting of the company. Some of you have been shareholders for a number of years. You know that we've talked about doing reverse stock splits in the past, but have held off on doing so because reverse stock splits can absolutely hurt a company if the company does not have a plan in place to grow its balance sheet based off of increased assets and revenue growth. That revenue growth comes in two forms. One, either the revenue that gets generated from the company or through mergers and acquisitions when acquiring other companies with revenue. We have held off on this because I believe fundamentally that doing a reverse stock split for the basic reason of just simply getting onto a major exchange and then going out and trying to raise capital to implement a business model that can help increase the balance sheet or revenue is not a winning strategy. So a couple of years ago, we began that winning strategy in advance by preparing the company so that we could get these acquisitions done. We believe that they are very fundamental and significant to the growth of the company. And in doing so, we would be acquiring revenue and balance sheet asset growth. Then, and only then, begin the process of uplisting, which we have now done in Q3 and will continue to push even harder in Q4 as we get into Q1 of next year and so on and so forth. So please understand that we have made the decision years ago to do this the right way. We have fantastic partners that are supporting us as well in doing it the right way. And so that's how we're going to progress. Okay, so I'm going to finish up right there. As I've already noted, we are going to have some additional shareholder updates that we dive deeper into the additional revenue models and business sector focus. That's AI data centers, that's energy, that's tokenomics of other companies. And so as we get into the rest of the quarter here, we'll get some announcements out as to when those, plural, updates are going to take place. In the meantime, thank you again for all of your support. New shareholders, thank you for joining us. Old shareholders, thank you for sticking with us. We are excited, extremely excited about the future of the company. I'm extremely excited about the new folks that have joined our company. And we're also excited more presently about being here at the 47G Summit in Salt Lake City, Utah, and being able to be part of everything that's going on here in Utah, especially in the growth of the defense sector, AI, and energy as it supports the Golden Dome project. So on that note, thank you again for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.